What is good, YouTube? I'm a millionaire, and today I'm going to be describing how I got into my first fight. Now, you guys gotta understand, this is a moment I hold deep in my heart. This was, I think, one of the most proudest This was one of my most proudest moments because this is my first fight. And depending on which side you're on the first fight, it can either be your proudest moment or your worst moment ever. And it just so happened to be my proudest moment. Now, back to the story and how I got into it. So, in order to understand the environment that I was in and the mentality that I had to have, I gotta take you way back, years earlier, to when I was 9 years old. So when I was 9, my parents had the brilliant idea of taking me to Africa. Now, if you're a non-Muslim or if you're non-Somali, you wouldn't understand. But parents of immigrants that were born here usually take their children to their motherland or their mother country for a number of years to get acclimated to the culture, to grow some balls and really get un-Americanized and really have that edge to them, because a lot of American children don't have edge to them, or they take them there to basically when they're super bad, they take them over there so that they can get discipline. Yeah, because you can't really do that in America. So back to the story. I'm 9-10 years old and I get sent to Africa, right? And during that time, you really have to get acclimated to the climate. You're getting bullied and you have to stand up to yourself. If you don't stand up to yourself, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there. You don't stand up for yourself, everybody else is gonna see, and you basically they're just gonna take advantage and bully you every single day. So I knew that from the start. Nobody even had to tell me. The mentality that I was born with and the mentality that I had to cultivate was, ain't nobody trying me. Ain't nobody trying me. So every single day I was standing up to bullies, chasing them down. And if you listen to my last story time, you'd understand. Go back if you haven't listened to that. How I got detention for the whole year. You'd understand that I got fat. And so I went to Africa, and this is 2011. You're over here, they're eating on that. They're feeding on the fact that I'm a fat ass, bro. And that used to make me so mad, bro. I used to chase these people down, get that little adrenaline rush and chase them down and, stand up for myself. But it never got to the point where that I had to fight, because they would always apologize, or they'd realize that I wasn't to play with, and they'd always apologize, right? So back to what I was trying to say. There was just one guy, however. And it's always the ones that really can't fight. And I didn't even know that until we fought. It's always the ones that can't fight that can't really fight. He was always joking around and, sneak dissing and, laughing, hiding it behind a smile, hiding it behind laughing. And I honestly thought that, hey, he's probably joking. I honestly thought he was joking. But as the time went on and I really got to see what was going on, I had come to the conclusion that this guy was just sneak dissing me behind my back. If you joke with me and you laugh at me and if you crack jokes, if you crack jokes and roast me, I'ma laugh back and I'ma roast you back. But if it continues and if you're hiding behind laughter all the time, and if you're going at my insecurities every single day trying to, provoke me, I'm well aware of people. I'm really good at tuning in and listening to the tonality behind people's explanations and their jokes and whatever they got to say. They say 80 to 90% of all communication is nonverbal. I study communication in my free time. I study human nature. So I understand these things. I always had an interest for these things. Right? And so I had realized that this guy isn't joking. He's actually serious, and he actually means what he says. and he's actually trying to make fun of me, and that did not sit right with me. Once I came to that conclusion, I had warned him. I said, look, if you diss me one more time, I'm on your ass. Like, if you diss me one more time, we gonna have to squabble, we gonna have to fight. He said, all right, bro. He said, all right. But if you know anything about anybody, you know he didn't stop. I seen him again, and this time he was at the mosque. And you know, at the mosque in Africa or in the Muslim country, that's where everybody comes to meet up and, you know, socialize. Back then, that's what it was. That's where everybody came to socialize and meet up and have like, and you could really see everybody there, because the call to prayer, the adhan, that's what it was. You could hear it from your house. So you'd hear it from your house, and you'd run to the mosque, and you know, you see all your friends, and you know, it would be a good time. It would be a good time, chat. And so I seen him at the mosque, right? And he said another slight sneak dissing joke. He said another sneak dissing joke about me trying to run away. But you know me, man. This is when I was fat, but I was starting to slim down, because in Africa, you know, you start to lose weight really, really fast. All that natural foods, none of that GMO seed oil stuff foods in America. You're over here, you're eating healthy, organic. You're in the sun all day, so you start to really build a body for yourself when you're in Africa. You know? Let me see. Yeah, you start to really build when you're in Africa. You understand? So this time I was starting to lose, around that time I was starting to really lose the weight, and I was getting really fast. So I had chased him down. I got him. When I tell you, once I got a hold of him, and you know, I'm a fighter at heart. Misfits, if you want me, pay up. But I'm a fighter for real. And so when I grabbed a hold of him, the way I beat the brakes off that boy, and to be honest, I was expecting a fight, because he was talking all that, which is why I said there's always the ones that talk the most that can't really hold their weight. I was expecting him to really fight back, but turns out he can't really fight. He took his beating like a man, though. I beat him up so badly. The people from the neighbors, the neighbors and everybody had to come outside and stop the fight, and I was just on top of him, just belt to ass. That's what I was doing. I was doing belt to ass on him. And I promise you, from the time I beat his ass up until I left, that man was showing me the utmost respect. The utmost respect. Which is kind of sad that you have to beat someone up for them to show you respect. But that's just the life it was over there. That was the life that I lived over there. You had to stand up for yourself, or you wouldn't get respected, or you wouldn't make no friends. You would be a loner just in the corner, and people would just make fun of you all the time. You had to stand up. You had to be the person that sat. Me going from an American culture to the African culture at such a young age, just getting thrown into it, just getting thrown in. There was no time to acclimate, because for the first 4 or 5 months, I did not live with my parents. So you gotta understand, I had learned to be laid back, relaxed, observe, and defend myself. I had learned a lot of life lessons that subconsciously changed me to this day. And so that's the story. I beat his ass, and he respected me until I left. And that's the story of how I got into my first fight. It wasn't really a fight, but it was a story on how I defended myself from a bully. But the title is going to be how I got into my first fight. Clickbait. Now, if you got until the end of this video, like and subscribe. I'm going to be big one day. I'm a millionaire, and I'm out.